Right, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you had good lunch? Yeah? Thank you for coming to my session. I know there are multiple sessions at the same time today. So today I'm going to talk about how you can use the simplified data architecture to help clients enable and grow their business. But before we get into the real meat of this, maybe a quick introduction. The picture on the left was taken exactly 10 days ago. I landed in Tanzania 10 days ago, and this was the glimpse of the Mount Kilimanjaro I captured from the cab. I was hoping to summit the Kilimanjaro. The picture on the right was taken exactly 5 days ago. On Saturday, I stood on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. So you can imagine that I landed directly from Mount Kilimanjaro to Austin, Texas, to talk to you guys about cool data products. So that's a little bit about myself. On a more serious note, I'm Ambika Dadwal. I run our global data and products platform for merchant acquiring business. I've spent 20 plus years building data platform and products in different industries, 12 plus years in payments, but I've done it for CPG, insurance, healthcare as well. So quite a bit of experience on the data side. So today, we're going to talk about how we think about data architecture, but more so about thinking about reporting and the analytics experience and how we can simplify that for our clients. So before we dive into this, how many of you have seen this known-unknown framework? Quite a few of them. It's been there. It's been in existence for a while. When I was thinking about setting a context for today's discussion, this was pretty fascinating. In 2012, I believe, at that time, Secretary of Defense, it was Donald Rumsfeld, who actually introduced this framework. He was talking about. He was actually answering reporters some of very difficult questions about war in Iran, is when he really introduced this concept. And to me, I think this is really a problem-solving tool as you start to think about what this can really help you with. And it was fascinating that somebody who's in charge of defending our country is able to use this framework to be able to then do the risk assessment, problem solve, change the strategies if they needed to. And I thought that this was quite relevant to what we are doing, what I'm doing, and I'm passionate about solving problems using the data. You really are, if you are leading an organization, building a product, launching a product, writing a code, or doing any large-scale transformation, I think all of us, if you think about it, we start from known knowns, right? We got to know these are the foundations. We got to know the facts. We know the repeatable tasks. So we feel good about the quadrant because we have the information. And then you kind of move to known unknowns where I know that there are things I don't know, but I'm going to get to it, right? But you kind of start to build out your strategy thinking through that. Then you move to unknown knowns, and you understand that there are things that you do not know yet, but that there are others out there who have some kind of information, or there are competitors out there who have done this before. So you have some data points to be able to then make assessment and build the strategies. And then you get to the unknown unknowns, right? And this is where, as a leader in the organization, anybody who is launching the new products in the market, you understand that there are always going to be the cases when you just don't know. Things are going to be unknown to you. But what do you do about it? So I use this tool quite a bit as I'm going to dive into how to think about building the future of the data architecture. Data geeks, some of us, we would think that we want to build the perfect data ecosystem. There is no such thing, right? There is no perfect data ecosystem, or there is no perfect data architecture or data solution. But what you can do is start to think about solving your problems. When you start to think about transforming your data platforms, you could start to kind of think about which quadrant you are in, and how you're going to use, how you're going to do problem solving based on the information that you have available to you, based on what is known to you at that point of time, your risk appetite, and then you make the decisions and you make your strategy decision based on that. So I want you to kind of set the context before we dive into the topic. Now, as I dive into the topic, like I said, I've done data all my life, right? And reporting was a sleepy town. Nobody talks about reporting. I mean, it's a boring topic, right? in fintech space, in a payment space, everybody talks about how many transactions, how many payments you did in a second, right? That's what people talk about. Nobody used to talk about data in general, and reporting in general wasn't at the main front. So it's quite fascinating for me 20 years forward to see that people are talking about data is produced everywhere, and now people are talking about how to talk to data and use the LLMs and Gen AI stuff. But if you think about old school reporting, right, people generally think that there is a MIS team that sits somewhere who knows what kind of data our clients want, and every day 9 o'clock in the morning, there is a report that gets sent out. Now, assumption is made that everybody wants the same report at the same time, right? If you think about how our businesses have changed, if I'm an e-com business, if your client is a big e-com client, the client is doing the business globally, right? They may want to have a report available to Australian market at a different time. They may have a different regulatory requirement for them to be able to do business in Europe and have a different requirements altogether, right? So this concept of one-size-fit-all reporting no longer exists. How many times, and again, I think in the fintech space, clients wants to be able to do things on their own. They want to be able to configure their own reports. They don't want to call you and say, yeah, it's going to take me 6 months now. I have to now start a new project. I will secure the resources. By the time I get you a report, it's 6 months down the line. We're no longer in that business. Clients wants to be able to get access to their data, and more so, they want access to the raw data. So typically, what we would do in a reporting space is that, and it's normal, right? We look at the data and say, okay, I understand what clients need, and we normalize it. We also summarize it and then provide the information, right? Clients want raw data. Think about a merchant who is, again, take example of e-com or a recurring biller, right? They want to be able to analyze their auth rates, and they want to be able to analyze auth rates using some of the raw data points that are available to them. Not only the data that acquirer has, but also the data they are getting from, say, payment networks, Visa, MasterCard, right? There are so many permutation combinations that can go in. So people want real-time data. Those days are long gone where you used to send the reports out at 9 a.m. Eastern anymore, right? So these are some of the problem statements we started off with when we started to think about why we need to really modernize our data platforms. And come to think about it, if you have a large client base, right, you have same format of the report that goes out to 300,000 clients. I'm just making it up. Think about if a client wants to now change something. You're going to impact every single merchant when you have to change a report, right? So how do you solve this problem? And this is where I kind of talk about APIs. But before I dive into this, how many of you attended this morning's keynote, right? One thing that stood out to me in that keynote, all of those companies we talked about, especially Mercury stood out to me, was they are customer obsessed, right? They are putting clients first, and they're thinking about their products in a way that how their clients are going to use their products, right? So that like all three of them, they are thinking about how the clients are going to use their products. That's their bottom line. Now, the sausage making behind the scenes, whether they use the partners, whether they build the solution in-house, what kind of integrations they have, they're not exposing any of that sausage making to any of their clients. It's really taken away from that. So essentially, idea with building reporting APIs is that putting your clients at the driving seat, right? So think about, take your customer. I'm talking about a small donut shop. I want to be able to sell as many donuts as I want. End of the day, I care about how much money got deposited into my account, right? I don't care about very fancy reporting, to be honest with you, to tell me that, hey, why did you give me $100 in my account end of the day? Because again, you kind of think about the business that I'm running. But I'm now talking about a very large, complex enterprise. For them, they're running millions of transactions a day. For them, cost of payments matters. They want to be able to understand each and every transaction and see how I can optimize that cost even further. How can I how can I get a better interchange rate? How can I get a better approval rate or auth rate on each of these transactions? So the concept about reporting has drastically changed. And if you are a company that offers the payment solutions, you have to think about your customers not only in terms of the size or the segment that they are in, you also have to think about the global presence, right? So if you think about If you're a global merchant, you got to think about regulations in Europe. If you're in Australia, you got to think about the reporting to the taxation authorities, right? So there are a lot of those complexities that comes in. So one size doesn't fit all. So think about putting clients first at the driving seat. Now, think about the integration. In today's world for reporting, and I think for I would say majority of it happens that way, that somebody generates a file, puts it on a file somewhere, and then we hope that somebody picked it up. And then after 10 days, client come back and say, whoa, we didn't pick up the file, and now file is deleted, and somebody regenerates the file and do it again. Think about integration for that client, right? If you can create a seamless integration for a client, just like how you created a API, exposed an endpoint for a payment, for them to be able to process payments, expose an endpoint for them to be able to get reporting via the same channel. But then ultimately, what bottom line is for our clients is that they want to be able to recon their general ledger, right? They want to be able to feed this information into their SAP systems or whatever systems that they use so that they can close the books, right? They close the books end of day, close the books end of month, so they are able to reconcile their books. So in a very simplified way, and again, we will dive into the architecture a little bit more, but in a very simplified way, keeping clients at the heart of all our solution. I'm saying that don't worry about 3. 3 is a sausage making. Number 3, where you have the data lake. You can use the names, whatever you want to use, lake house, your reporting engine, your data warehouse solutions. Client doesn't need to know any of that. That's a sausage making. That's where you kind of build your solutions, whatever solutions you want to build. But clients care about the experience that you're offering them in number 1 and number 2, because that's their bread and butter, right? So how do you create an experience in a way that you simplify the experience for client, yet you make your behind the scenes systems seamless for client? So let's dive into it and see what I mean by that. Excuse me, I have a bad cough. Must have caught it somewhere along my long haul flights. So what I mean by that? Now I know that you cannot build the data ecosystems in a way and then give free fall access to all the merchants to be able to build whatever reports they want to build, right? I know that you would have to kind of have the rules of roads, which means that you would have to give them a starting point. You would have to give them the basic guardrails to say, here are the types of data that is available to you. Right, and the reason you want to give them the guardrails is because you want to protect your data ecosystems as well, to be able to then not get overloaded by the bad running queries that are now run from the client perspective. So you give them the baseline. I think of it as you go to a restaurant and you have a menu. You have the basic dishes that they give it to you, but then you can customize them, right? So that's exactly how I think about this space as well. To give them a basic menu of the type of data that is available to them, but then to give them the options to be able to customize it, right? You want to be able to add new attributes, add new calculations. You want to have aggregations, filters. I want to schedule it for Australia time zone versus US time zone, right? So you start to kind of give them the options to build their report. And then once they configure it, it's completely customized to that client, right? The beauty of this solution is that very large enterprise can build a very complex report, and I'll show you. It's a simple JSON object. They can build a very complex JSON object, or very simple client can say, hey, I just want your standard reports that are there for me. I don't want any fancy filtering criteria on top of it, and which is fine as well. So you created a solution that works for a very large enterprise client to a very small business, mom and pop shop, for them to be able to run the business effectively. So the 3 things that kind of the key principles we kept in mind as we start to think about this solution is simplify the access. Nobody has time today now to read through the PDFs and documents and understand how to access your shared drive and set up the secure protocols, right? Give them a streamlined access. Everybody can code to an API in a day, test it out, make sure that they are able to connect to our systems and be able to be up and running. Second, give them options to customize. Everybody wants to have a customization. So you are no longer in the business of supplying reports for somebody. They are in their own business of building reports for themselves. And third and most important, I would say, is that figure out a way to normalize this data. And I think this is where the rubber meets the road. It's easier said than done. When you start to think about providing them this kind of capability, you also have to think about how you're going to normalize the data across geographies, across different payment scenarios that may come in play, right? How are you going to normalize all of that data set and give them ultimately the unique experience so that they come to a single place. So let's dive into some of the key principles of what data platform looks like for us. And again, I think it's by design. There are some pictures up there. There are some tools, technologies that I've shared that we have used and we have seen that work. But I'll start with kind of the 3 key principles that we kept in mind when we started designing this large-scale data platform. There were 3 key non-negotiable items that we kind of started off with. One, which is most important, is the bottom one, which says data management piece. Now, you can imagine everybody who is in a financial industry, we are highly regulated. You got to make sure that you are complying to PCI standards, your PII is secured, you have the rules and policies in place for your data at rest, data in motion. So we needed to have a robust data management capabilities in the place, and those are non-negotiable to us. So we have, again, tools are your choice, right? But define your data governance policies. Use your policies to entitle the fine-grained access to your data. Invest in catalog. I cannot say this enough. I think this is probably the most underinvested area in a lot of organizations where you run the large-scale data platforms. They don't know what's there in their databases because there is no catalog. There is not enough information that's available. SMEs, we rely on people to give us that information. SMEs come and go, right? So invest in catalog. Now, I'm not saying that you buy something or you build something. I think everybody can make decisions based on the size of the company where you're making investments. So buy versus build doesn't matter, but invest in having the tool that gives you ability to have a catalog. Because all of those functions that we just talked about are all metadata driven. Without the catalog, you will not be able to really have the self-serve and the customization capability. And in the end, data masking, like I talked about, PCI implications, especially as you start to move to cloud. There are some pretty strict rules and guidelines that are in play from PCI perspective to be able to have the data masking, have the encryption. So these were kind of like our non-negotiable items when we started the data platform and said, we will never make compromises on the data management piece, right? So I think, again, what happens is when you start a large project, there are always going to be gives and takes. There are always going to be compromises you would have to make depending upon what's your step 1 delivery, what's your step 2, step 3 delivery. But we kind of put the principle in place that these are the things that are non-negotiable to us. On the left-hand side, also we said these are non-negotiable to us are the data sources and how we bring the data into the data platform. Now, there are 2 chain of thoughts, and we debated this quite a bit. When we started to standardize how we bring the data into our ecosystem, there were a lot of people who debated that you should be able to bring any data into data lake in a easier fashion. That should be something that you make it available right away. And the question the struggle that we have is if you let anybody and everybody to bring in data, any data into data lake, it's garbage in, garbage out. You really do not have any controls in place at that point of time to really understand what data is coming in, who is bringing it in, is there a metadata associated with it? How do I secure this data if I don't have the metadata information tied to it, right? So we kind of put the governance structure in place on the left-hand side and build the frameworks and the patterns up front to say that there are defined patterns on how you can bring the data into the ecosystem, and those were non-negotiable for us. And the right-hand side is the third bucket where I kind of lay out the consumption channels. Now, APIs is what I'm talking about today, but you could think about once your data ecosystem is stood up in a way that you have a single version of the truth, you can have APIs, you can have your portal if you are in business of building the portals and have that footprint. You could provide the file feeds, you could have this ecosystem available to your internal data scientists or internal business folks as well, have Tableau, QuickSight, whatever you want to have on top of it. But But the thing is that you can democratize how you build the applications on the right-hand side with the guideline that everybody will use a single version of the truth that is available to them in that query platform, right? So I think those were kind of the three key principles we laid out when we started to think about a data architecture and what the data footprint will look like. Now, I'm not saying the things in the middle are not important, right? The things in the middle are quite important. Is when the true work is really happening, when you start to think about data ecosystem, right? But you kind of lay out the ground rules of what is non-negotiable in my ecosystem. Within the boxes inside, right, you have flexibility. Like if you see here, we use AWS quite a bit, so S3 is our natural choice for us to be able to bring in the data into ecosystem. But then as you start to kind of move the data from left to right, you could bring in the tools of your choices depending upon what you're trying to do. For us, we use Delta Lake. A lot of people use the full Databricks solution. It's totally up to your organization and what your needs are. We use Snowflake as a query platform for us to be able to provide capabilities, whether for API. We have OpenSearch as well. So again, like I said, the box in the middle is where you have a lot of flexibility to design what tools, capabilities you wanna be able to bring forward. But the boxes around it are the ones which are kind of the key enablers for you to be able to have the customization of the APIs. All right. So I don't have to kind of double click on this one, but I do want to kind of talk about why we came up with these big categories of how the data moves from one hop to another. It's not always a bad thing, by the way, that you have data hops. People always think that, because you are creating so many data hops, there is latency and this and that. Actually, it's not a bad idea if you have a right intent behind why you are creating a data hop. I always say that keep an immutable copy of your data when source system is sending you the data. Our S3 raw is essentially a mutable copy of the data, which means at any given point of time, I know what my source system sent me, right? And it becomes easier when you are in a situation where the bad data came in and you have to go back to source system to correct it. You have a copy of the data to show, hey, you sent me the bad data to begin with. And then I think we call it curation, but it's essentially old school ETL. Those who have been doing this for a long time, you kind of cleanse the data, make sure there are no duplicates, make sure you have the right IDs, you're able to run update, deletes, all of that. Typical ETL function is what we run on Delta Lake and S3. But then from there on, we move to really Spark Snowflake solutions, depending upon what you're trying to do. And like I said, it has a lot of flexibility based on where your company is at and what you're trying to achieve. What I don't have in this picture, and maybe if I go back to this, we have a pretty big group of internal usage. And I'm not talking about that today, but I want to highlight it here. Because what happens is once you create a data ecosystem in a way that you are providing the same data that goes out to your external clients, you have the same data that you're now providing to internal clients, right? That's usually a struggle in a large-scale organization, whereas there are so many different sources of the data. Sometimes internal data not always matching with external data. This data can be given to your operations team, your client service team. You could build Tableau, QuickSight, whatever tools on capabilities on top of it. So I think that's a pretty important point to say. It's not just for external, but also for internal. It enables you to then bring out other capabilities and tools and technologies internally that you want to expose. All right, so I have a little bit of a video. I want to show you what this JSON object looks like and what this API looks like and how simplified it is. So let me play the video, and then I could kind of talk through what you see here. So what you see here, again, simple Postman collection. You can see, excuse me, you can see a single report type endpoint. And again, it's nothing but a simple endpoint that gives you the definition of what the attributes are. You can pick the header of just like in old school, you would build a report, right? You have a header. You have the body of the report, and in the body of the report, you can start to build out what columns you want, what attributes you want. You can customize all of those as part of the body of the JSON itself, and then you can start to apply fancy criteria, you want to sort it. You have any calculated fields, you can do it. You can also start to kind of say, when do you want this report to be delivered? The format of the report you can choose. Excuse me. And then you can start to see that, once you build a report, give me 1 minute, I'm going to pause it and see if I can. So once you build a report, you can now call another endpoint where you can simply get the status of the report. Or there is also a notification service that you could build to say, hey, once the report status is complete, just let me know and I can come pick up the report. Yeah, now you can do CSV, PDF, you can make it available in S3. Somebody can come in and pick up the report from S3 bucket as well. And this is just simple output when I'm doing the Postman for me to be able to get access to that data. Now, the reason I wanted to show this, I do not know how to exit out of here. I'm sorry. Give me 1 minute. So the reason I wanted to show you this collection of Postman is because it's very simple. It's developer friendly. Behind the scenes, all of this workload is running on Snowflake. But now you can say that it's not a fixed format of the report anymore, right? It is a JSON object that you can modify, and then you can really start to play around with it. You can go from a very simplified version, and then you can start to expand it and become more and more sophisticated. So that's how we really use the APIs. Now, where do we go next from here? I feel I've been in data space for a long time, and I've seen how the market is really moving ahead. Even some of the big players in the market who are on their modernization journey now, whether they are moving to cloud, doesn't matter which cloud solution, whether they are moving to Snowflake, whether they're moving to AWS, Azure, wherever, they are all on their modernization journey. And I feel that as you start to produce the massive amount of data in the ecosystem, companies are going to look for new ways to be able to get access to their own data, right? So if you are a merchant acquirer, or you are processing credit card payments, or in any ecosystem in the payments, if you are processing transactions on behalf of client, there is going to be time that client is going to say, hey, listen, I want access to my raw data, and I no longer need you to build Excel reports and PDF reports for me, right? The way the market trend is going, Snowflake came out with Snowflake data share a long time ago. I think now it has started to pick up, and people have started to use it. But if you think about it, if I am on Snowflake, your client is also using Snowflake, it becomes seamless experience for you if you have the right metadata in place, if you have the right catalog in place, if you have right fine-grained entitlement access in place. You can actually start to expose the data without creating copies of the data, without generating CSVs and all of that, because that puts burden on your ecosystem. Now you can pass on the consumption to the client, who can then start to use some of these data sets in the way they want it. They can take it and they can feed it into their analytic systems as well, right? Same thing with AWS. You can do the S3 data share. I think there are some companies out there who are already doing it and have made it publicly available as well. So there are opportunities now for, if you are on AWS, your clients are also on AWS, you can actually start to share the data using the S3 file buckets, right? You're gone are those days where you have to create a reporting solution for them, right? You can make the data available to them. It's their data anyway, and you can make the data available to them in the S3 data file share. So I definitely think that that's where the market is moving towards. I thought this would be slower adoption, but what we're seeing in the market is more and more companies who are modernizing their footprint are asking for some of these kind of solutions now to be made available to them. So I'll leave you with three things, and I probably have quite a bit of time, but I'll leave you with three things, if I may, as any one of you who's starting their journey on modernizing their reporting, starting the journey to modernize their data footprint, or even thinking about, doesn't matter you have clients external or internal. Three things I would say keep in mind. Be customer obsessed. Start with talking to your clients, right? We assume a lot of times, because we've had this legacy knowledge about payment data, and MIS teams have understood this data and what our clients want. But there is a value in starting all over again and understand what clients really want, because clients also have different needs. Their businesses have grown. Start with what clients really want. In our case, reporting API solution actually provides them an easy access to get to the back door. They usually used to be a pretty heavier lift for them. For now, they can go to API and get access to the data, which is quite simple for them. So start with your customer and see what the customers really want. Second, invest in being your platform to be resilient and reliable. I'll tell you a story, real story. We launched our solution with a very first client in a market, and we were only in one region of AWS. At that time, when we made a decision, I said, yeah, nothing is going to happen. Like, have you ever heard of region going down? Come on, no, right? Guess what? We launched, the client onboarded, and very next day, we had a huge AWS outage, and the whole region went down. So, like I said, never say never. Always plan to have, your system to be resilient and reliable, because our clients are using this information to be made available to them, whether it's regulatory bodies who are coming to them and asking for information, right? Whether they need this information to be submitted to a tax authority, or whether they need this information to be able to recon their books, and it's end of the month close that needs to happen. So, invest in making sure that you have the resilient platform. Then only clients will come in and use some of these solutions. And third, and I feel it's most important, is that simplify your solutions. Take the complexity away from clients. Think about how you can make their life simpler and simpler go forward. You'll be amazed that if you tell clients that you come process payments with us anywhere globally, doesn't matter, you process payments in Europe and Australia and Brazil and India, and I will make sure that I'm able to normalize all of this data behind the scenes for you, so you don't have to worry about understanding where the data is coming from, and each thing is called differently in different country. There is a lot of value for clients when you take that friction out of that ecosystem. So make sure that you are designing your applications to be really simple. Reporting doesn't have to be hard. It used to be, the thing that nobody talked about, but it can be very powerful, and it can ultimately think about, if I can tell a client that how they can optimize their auth rates. If I can tell clients that if they do X, Y, and Z and submit their transaction again, they can reduce their cost of payments. It ultimately, you think about their growing, ultimately goes down to their bottom line, and they grow their revenue. So it ultimately, you're helping your clients grow their revenue, and ultimately helps you to then retain your client and grow your business. So that's all I had. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys joining. I definitely have time for questions as well, so more than happy to take the questions. Cool. No questions. I guess I did really good then. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.